Oh, control your mind, control your life. Think different theory, baby. That's what we do. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Think Different Theory. My name is Josh Forti, and today, guys, I am doing my first ever, I think it's my first ever, book review. I've interviewed authors about their books before. I don't really call that a book review. This is an actual book review about the book, The Power of Now by Eckart Tolle. I think it's Eckart Tolle. I'm going to call it Eckart Tolle. If it's Eckart Tolle, I apologize, but Eckart Tolle, okay? The book is called The Power of Now. It's actually a very controversial book, and actually it's interesting what inspired this book review, this episode, is because I actually posted about it on both Facebook and Instagram, and the amount of feedback that I got back about this book from both Christians and non-Christians and business minds alike, a lot of opinions about it for those people that have read it, because it's called The Power of Now. It is a guide to spiritual enlightenment. Now, for those of you that know me at all, you know that I am a Christian. I believe in the Bible. I believe in the God of the Bible, and I've had my wrestles with the Bible. I've wrestled with the Bible. I have wrestled with my faith a lot, and I've been pretty open and vocal about that, but I still do believe in the God of the Bible. I still do believe in the Bible. I fundamentally believe that we are, that the human race is fallen. We are a flawed society, a flawed race. We are not born good, but we are born fallen and in need of a savior, that Jesus came down, died on the cross to save us for our sins, like all of that, right? And so I lean very much that way. However, I explore a lot of different religious ideas, whether it would be Buddhism or Hinduism or, Catholicism or, Mormonism or, whatever, right? Atheism even. And so this is, we're living in a time where a lot of new age thinking is around. And this book is very much into that more new age thinking. In fact, Eckart Tolle he also wrote the book, which I have not read yet, but it's up on my bookshelf, called A New Earth. And so as I posted this book and as I started, talking to people about it, a lot of people were like, well, Josh, like that's not a Christian book, or that's a book that, is quite controversial. And so we're going to dive into that. I had a lot of people ask for this episode. A lot of people, both on Facebook, but even more people on Instagram. I did a poll, and like 90% of the people that voted said they wanted a podcast review on it. I had many, many DMs about it. And so, like I said, first ever book review podcast. If you guys like this, if you like the breakdown of the book reviews and how I do them, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you want more of them. By the time we're done with this, if you're listening on audio, shoot me a DM on Instagram. Let me know if you liked it or not. But we're going to dive into this because this book, ladies and gentlemen, this book has changed my perspective on life and on who we are and how we operate. Now, I want you to pay very close attention to what I'm saying as we go through this, because there's a fundamental difference about me saying that I believe everything in this book and just that it changed my perspective, because I don't believe about everything in this book, and I don't agree with everything in this book. In fact, I fundamentally disagree with some of the things that he ties some things to, but we're going to get into that. We're going to break it all down, and I'm very, very excited about this. Now, really quickly, before I dive in, I do want to let you guys know we got some cool stuff coming up, and so I'm just kind of hinting it out there. I'm just teasing you about it. In February, something's going to change, and I can't exactly tell you what it is yet. And then March, something else is going to change. So I'm really, really excited, but just know back when we started season 2 of Think Different Theory, season 3 of Think Different Theory, the purpose of starting season 3 of Think Different Theory was to really go and start documenting things, start creating curriculum, start interviewing successful people, both on the podcast and also behind the scenes, start developing curriculum from how we think and how we build businesses and how we become successful. And so we kind of have the next evolution or update on that coming out. And so I'm just kind of giving you a hint about that, but big stuff is coming. Okay, let's get into this book. Okay, let me start by saying this. I would not recommend someone that is, how do I say this? This book is not for beginners, okay? This book is, it's very deep, and in fact, it's funny, I before I did this podcast, I went on, I think it was goodreads.com. I think it was Goodreads. Let me see here. Where did I go? I just, Googled The Power of Now reviews, right? Yeah, it was Goodreads. And it's so funny because it's either 1 stars or 5 stars, right? It's you either love this book or you hate this book, right? The 1 stars are, there is no way to say this nice. I hate this book with a fiery passion. It did not make me feel at peace, but rather make me want to chew my arm off, right? Somebody else is it would be easy to dismiss this book as the fruit salad of new age, mashed into a fine puree of nonsense, right? But then on the other side, this is, there's a point in our lives when we say enough is enough. This book is about that. About the second reading of this book, I realized that any form of negativity actually reflects resistance, like a lot of positive reviews, right? So it's very, like, I imagine that most people that read this book that don't like it are just not at a point in their journey of understanding how, like, we as humans operate that someone that does like this book does. Now, that's not to say that you're better or that you're worse. I'm just saying, like, we're all on a different journey and all on a different path. I'm discovering this at age 26, almost age 27. Other people might discover this at 40. Somebody else might discover it at 13. That doesn't make it better or worse. It just is. But you really have to be in the right state of mind to accept this book, because, like, right out of the gate, you're like, boom, whoa, hold on. Like, he's introducing topics that are very, very deep. Okay. So this book is not something that I would say, like, is a light read that you should just, you're going to read really quickly and be profoundly blown away. Like, you've got to be ready to kind of go through something like this. Now, before we dive into the actual context of the book, I think it's important to mention that I don't look to books like this, for example, for truth. I believe that truth, that the closest thing to truth, and that truth here on earth is in the Bible. I believe that. And I believe that truth is, and the way I choose to live my life, I have to base everything in the Bible, right? Or on the Bible. I have, and this is not the time and the place to go into this, I have my reservations about the Bible. And I have openly talked about how I think that a lot of the interpretations of the Bible are wrong because of how many times it's been translated over and over and over again. And that while I do believe that the Bible, when it was written, was flawless and was direct truth from the Word of God, that in modern day age, I think a lot of things are misinterpreted. That doesn't mean I don't believe the Bible is all the way true, but I look to the Bible as my source of truth, and I base everything in that, and I kind of come at that from a way, my life in a way from that. And so I am not at a place in life right now where I am searching for some deeper, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm completely lost in searching and I'm trying to find God. I believe I have a pretty solid relationship with God, and I go into and read books like this to better understand the practical application of how we work, how our minds work, the power of being and presence and energies. And because what I believe is, I believe that, and how do I say this? I almost believe that people sometimes take the Bible too literally. And what I mean by that is, like, I think that a lot of Christians sometimes are like, well, science can't explain that. It's just God. And I'm like, well, science is basically God's creation. And so I think that we can look to the things around us. We can look to, whether it's the heavens or whether it's whatever, the science or things, to help us better understand how we work and the world around us. And some things do not make sense, and they never will. Yet stories, and especially someone like me, like, my gift in life is the gift of communication. I'm very good with words, and that's my special talent. I'm not horribly athletic, right? I'm not horribly I'm terrible at design. Like, there's a lot of things but my gift is words, and so the ability to communicate with someone or explain things in a way that people understand, that's what I'm very good at. And so books like this allow things that may be complex or things that we don't understand to be able to be explained in a different perspective than maybe we would have heard it elsewhere. And so when I look to this book came highly recommended from my coach, Katie Richardson, who is one of just the most phenomenal human beings I've ever met in my whole life. She's just absolutely incredible. That's my $60,000 mindset coach, right? Per year, right? I've been with her. I'm on month 13 right now. So I started with her in January of 2020. We're now in January of 2021, and just phenomenal. I mean, she's absolutely amazing. And she talks a lot about the power of presence, the power of being, the power of agency, the power of choice, right? And how there's a lot of power in being. And when I started working with her, I was a very logical person. I'm a very logic-driven person. Katie, on the other hand, she doesn't lead with logic so much as she leads with her intuition and emotion and knowing. But it's still very based in, like, logic, right? And so as I've gone and worked with her for the past 12 months, she's talked a lot about presence and being, and I had a hard time understanding some of the things that she was trying to communicate to me until I read this book. And then so many things made sense because this talks about the power of presence and the power of being. And so that's why I say, like, keep in mind, like, I read this book after working with somebody for 12 months that I paid $5,000 a month to every month just to work on my mind. Okay. And so we're going to break this down, but I look to this book and other books like this, not to say what is ultimate truth, but rather, how can I better understand the world around me? How can I better understand how I'm created and built? How can I better understand my power and what I've been designed to do? And I think books like this book and others give us more context around how we work as humans, if that makes sense. So hopefully that provides a little bit more context around this book. One more thing I think that's important to say here, it may or may not be relevant, but I'm going to say it. I also do not believe that there is a lot of absolutes in this world. I believe that, especially in the church setting that I grew up in, that we, and this is not so much from my parents, but rather just from the church setting that I grew up in, that there was a lot of rules and that there was a lot of absolutes. There's always a right or a wrong way to do something. I don't believe that. I believe that there is absolute truth in the world, and I believe that there is such a thing as an absolute, but I believe it is very, very, very few things. Like, I believe that God exists. I believe that is absolute, and I believe there's absolute right and wrong. How that is determined and to what spectrum, I think, is very, very, very up for debate and very, very small when it comes to living in our daily life, but rather we have a choice whether to accept or reject things. Right? But I do absolutely believe in absolute the moral law of good and evil. And I believe that that is determined by God. But everything else, I think, is pretty relative, especially when you start studying things like quantum physics and things of that nature. Like, you know, I'm not going to go into the detail of that because the purpose of it is to kind of dive into this book. Okay, so let's dive in. That's the context around this. So come at this with the understanding of, I'm not saying everybody should go read this book. In fact, most people that are listening right now, if they went and read this book, there'd be a lot of resistance to what is in this book. I had a lot of resistance to the book as well, but because I fundamentally do disagree with some of the things in here. Okay, so let's dive in. So the context of this book, kind of the premise of what he is trying to communicate, and this is in my words, is he is trying to, well, as you might have guessed, communicate to us the power of living in the present moment, being present right now. Okay, not living in the future, not dwelling in the past. Because as he explains in the book, if you are living in, or dwelling in the past or living in the future, you are creating stress, you are creating scenarios, that are not actually real and don't exist. And you are basically projecting things into your life currently now and taking away all of your power, because you have power. Like basically in the book, he basically explains that the only time that is real is right now. Like everything that has ever happened in the history of mankind has happened in the present moment. And what he means by that, and what he explains is like, yes, it might have happened 30 years ago or 3,000 years ago, but when it happened, it didn't happen in the past and it didn't happen in the future. When it was happening in the present moment for those people. And so that the only time that really exists in our lifetime is in the present moment, right now. 1 second ago, that's the past. But when 1 second ago happened, it happened in the future. So right now is happening. 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 5 seconds, right? Boom, boom, boom. But each one of those seconds happened at the present moment. And so basically the premise of the book, and I'm way, way, way simplifying down this book. I mean, it's very, very deep. But he says that when you understand that everything happens in the present moment, then you choose to live in the present moment, that's where you have power. And that's where you have choice. And that's where you have the ability to make change. And that's where you have the ability to really go and change your life, right? And we do that, and we live in the now. We live in the present moment by being present and being. Now, there's really 2 parts to this, right? The first part is understanding of like what he's saying. But the second part, and he actually leads with this second part here, is understanding who we are in the sense of that, like we just are. And by choosing to be, how do I explain this? Let me back up, okay? I'm gonna tell you a story because it's important. Almost 3 years ago now, 2 years, 9 months, 2 years, 10 months, I was at one of the lowest points in my life up until that moment. I had gone from making the most money I'd ever made in my life. I was making, 30, 40, 50, sometimes even like $60,000 a month. And I was horribly, miserably depressed. I was overworked. I had no social life. I had no, I wasn't in a relationship. All I did was work 24 hours a day. Like from the moment I woke up, it was literally, I kept my phone by me when I was, sleeping, and I would roll over and start working when I woke up, and I would roll to the time I went to sleep. That's all it was. And so I had gone from that to where I canceled all my clients. I refunded tens of thousands of dollars. I cried myself to sleep, and I was in bed for a week. And that was kind of this thing that led me on this path to mindset. And I've told this story many, many times. And so from there, I spent the next 7 to 8 months just studying everything that I could do about mindset. I basically shut down my business. I lived off of savings, and I read, Joe Dispenza and Tony Robbins and everything that I could possibly think of, conferences and courses about studying how the mind works. Psycho-Cybernetics, one of my top, or it is probably my number one favorite book of all time that's non-religious, right? From a mindset perspective, Psycho-Cybernetics is just amazing. So for the last 2.5 to 3, almost 3 years now, I have essentially convinced myself and made myself believe that I am my mind. You probably heard the saying that I think, therefore I am, right? Whatever our thoughts are, those are the things that define, those are the things that make us who we are. And so if we can control our mind, if we can go through, if we become the master of our mind, we master our life because we are our minds. That is what I had convinced myself of without even realizing that I had convinced myself of that. I had just said it so many times, I just assumed that was right because of everything that I had read, everything that I had studied told me that if I just mastered my mind, that was going to hold the answers to all the keys in life, right? And so I studied mindset like crazy. And that's what started this podcast, the Think Different theory. And if you think, you must use your mind, right? So my whole life, and even working with Katie, it was, I am my mind, I am my mind, I am my mind. The very first chapter of this book, I open up, first chapter. Chapter 1, you are not your mind. Boo, right? Totally, right out of the gates, totally shatters my worldview. Now, when I read this book, whenever I have a book, and I actually told Katie this today, I was having a coaching call with her. I said, Katie, when I read a book that comes highly recommended from somebody that I respect, AKA Katie, I try to go into this with the understanding or with a very open mind and go, okay, I am going to try to accept what they're saying to me as true fully. Doesn't mean I have to fully believe it or live it out. But when I'm reading this book, I really want to try to just accept what they're saying at face value, understanding that they're probably going to bring the whole picture together. So when I first read this, it's I don't know, it's the first, where are we at here? It's the first chapter. He tells a story and he goes through and it's in the first couple pages, he explains how we are not our minds. And I'm like, wait, what? Process, really difficult for me. My whole life I've been we are our minds. Basically what he explains is that there is us. And the way I like to think about this, there's not really one way he explains it, but think of a blob of I don't know, radiating mush. That's us. And then our mind is a tool. So we are, there's another level below our minds is us, right? And then that state of us is called being. When we have turned off everything else, including our mind, that is the power of just being. Not the power of, that is what we refer to as being, just be. So if you were to say, hey, just be present, be, that is what he's referring to. And then we have our mind, which is a tool. And our mind is controlled by us being, and we have control over our mind as a tool. So we can use it. And we have the ability to turn off our mind. And just because we've turned off our mind, which sounds crazy, especially to someone like me, when my whole life was my mind, sometimes that's a good thing. And a lot of times we need to shut off our mind because our mind is where judgment is made. Our mind is where decisions are made. Our mind is where we try to determine, things. And so while our mind is a very, very, very valuable and important tool, we are not our mind. We are separate from that. And we see the world through the lens of our mind. So we make all of our decisions, we make our judgments, we see colors, we interpret information, we grow, we make everything that we do in life, we use our mind to do those things. However, we are not that, we are separate from that, and we can we have the ability to turn that off and just be. But most people are addicted to using their mind. 1,000,000% that was me and is me. I love using my mind. It's like this superpower tool that I just get to go have fun with. You ever watch the movie Frozen, right? And Elsa has she can just spew ice. It's freaking lit. She builds this massive castle. That's what I feel like with my mind. I'm like, all of us have this mind. It's like this superpower. I can go and I can design things in my mind. And I remember I was voxing a friend of mine, Marley Jax, a good friend of mine. I love Marley, right? I was telling her one time that sometimes I literally just lay in bed at night and I just go inside my mind and I just build things. And I just build things with my mind because my mind just won't shut off. Because I was thinking I was my mind, right? I was addicted to using my mind. So right out of the gate, he basically goes and sets this premise that you are not your mind, you are separate from your mind, and that your mind is a tool that can either be good or bad, okay? Before I go into what I liked about the book, I think it's good to basically explain what I don't like, okay? Actually, let me finish this thought about not your mind, okay? That's how he opens the book, is he sets this premise that says there's you, then there's your mind, and there's everything else. You're separate from that. You can control your mind, but most of your problems, and I'm not saying that I necessarily believe this. I'm saying that this is what he says, that all of your problems come because of the way that you interpret it with your mind. And because your mind, and there's so many examples I could use, but I don't want to go too deep here. You have to read the book. But because your mind is filled with stories and circumstances and everything from the time that you were born, that's what's going to determine how you think. And because of that, you are going to inflict pain upon yourself because your mind constantly wants to go into the future or constantly wants to go into the past rather than just being present in the present moment right now. And when you are dwelling in the past or living in the future, that's what inflicts suffering. And there's a lot of negative that goes with that. It's not that we can never do those things. It's not that we can't learn from the past or, be excited about the future, because we absolutely can. But living there or living in the future or dwelling on the past is a negative thing, right? So that's how he starts the book. And then the rest of the book is basically practical explanations and exercises around how to be present and how being present really affects everything around you. So the book is actually written, this is one thing I didn't mention at the beginning, and I think it's important to note. The book is written in such a way where it's not like a traditional book. He basically opens up with this context of you are not your mind, and then the rest of the book is basically Q&A. It'll go and it's two different voices in the audiobook, but someone asks a question, and then he answers the question. And some of them are short answers, some of them are long answers, but it's basically every question that he's ever been asked throughout the years that he's been teaching this, and he answers those in this book. It's a very fascinating way to write a book, and I actually really like it. I'll probably write a book like this one day, it's a great way to do that. So here are the rest of the chapters. Let me just read you these chapters, okay? So the first chapter is You Are Not Your Mind. Second chapter is Consciousness, the Way Out of Pain. Third chapter is Moving Deeply into the Now. The fourth chapter is Mind Strategies for Avoiding the Now. Chapter 5, The State of Presence. Chapter 6, The Inner Body. Chapter 7, Portals into the Unmanifested. Chapter 8, Enlightened Relationships. Chapter 9, Beyond Happiness and Unhappiness, There is Peace. Very interesting episode there. And then chapter 10, The Meaning of Surrender. And so throughout the book, he goes in and he explains how each one of those things fit into being and presence and the power of living right now in the present moment. Okay. Where do I disagree with him? And now that you kind of understand the premise of the book, I want to kind of go into the issues, like what I didn't like about it and what I did like about it. As I said, I'm not looking to this book for truth. I am not looking to this book to give me the answers to life. I was looking at this book from a perspective of how do I learn more about my surroundings? In the book, he states and explains and educates a lot of things. But at the end of explaining each one of those things, he basically he gives the reason why, kind of. And so he'll say things, and this is where I really started to disagree with him, because I would love it when he would give the practical application of how the things worked and how our bodies would react and how we will react and like what that does and how we, grab our power. And like from all of a tactical reasoning, I really liked the book. But then he would start to say things like, we are God, and how basically all of us are all connected. We are all one big source, right? All together. And all of us are God inside of us. And that we can all tap into our inner being. And by tapping into our inner being, like, imagine like a monk or something like that, like just like by tapping into that is like us accessing God because we are all one. Now, as a Christian, I strongly disagree with that, right? We are not God. And I believe that. And so where I started to have problems with, and this is why a lot of Christians have problems with the book, but I still encourage everybody to go read it. Don't be closed-minded, by the way, Christians. Like, if you believe here's the thing that I don't get about Christians. Side note, side rant here. You'll like it. I hope you like. Hope you don't mind my side rants. One of the problems I have with Christians is that Christians are like, the Bible is the way, the truth, and life. We only read the Bible. The Bible is everything. And I'm like, I agree. I 100% agree with you. You shouldn't need to read anything else. And I'm like, okay, it's like they're afraid to read any other book or explore any other options. Not all Christians. I mean, obviously not all Christians are that way, but it's like, how dare you? I mean, I got a lot of comments on Facebook. Oh, so you're getting into that mystical new age crap. I'm like, or I'm just trying to study and understand a different perspective, right? Or when I was studying Mormonism, I got a lot of people that yell at me for that. When I was studying, this was a couple years ago when I was reading, books about like Buddhism and like stuff. It's like, you can't possibly be into that. And I'm like, I'm trying to understand a better perspective. And here's the deal. If the Bible is flawless, if the Bible truly is what you Christian, what us as Christians believe it is, then nothing that we should reach should bother us because we could always bring it back to the truth of the Bible. So I don't understand why Christians are so closed-minded sometimes, because a lot of Christians are very, very closed-minded. I try to be very open-minded with this. But like, so he started tying these reasons to like basically say there is no good or bad. There only is. We are God, and we can access that. And what I felt like he was saying, and he never came out and said this directly, but it really felt like he was saying that the purpose of us humans here on earth, like literally why we were put here, was to tap into this inner consciousness of us being God, basically, and live and dwell there. And I have a problem with that because while I believe that we can definitely access those things, and I do believe that you can access, I don't know if it's a higher, and I'm not really qualified to say about like the higher level of consciousness or what it is. I do believe we can access some form of higher knowledge and a peace that passes all understanding, like it talks about in the Bible. I do believe that by being present and by being now, that you very much can tap into that, and I believe you should. But I do not believe, and this is strictly what I believe. You could believe differently than this. This is just me and what I didn't like about it, right? I do not believe that our purpose here on earth is just to sit there and tap into that and try to access and be God. I believe that God created us, and that being, that golden blob that I was talking about outside of the mind, that lives on for eternity. That's what we call it, our soul, call it whatever it is that you want. That knowing, that power, like that was pure before life. It goes on after life. That's what goes on into heaven or whatever you believe comes after life, right? And so that golden blob, as we're going to call it, which is us, our being, was put into a human physical body here on earth. We were given a mind as a tool, and we were put on this earth for a very specific purpose. And we were given talents, and we were given responsibilities by God to go out and to actually do something with that. And I believe that our purpose on earth, this is me as a Christian, is to bring glory and honor to God. Now, if you do not believe in the God of the Bible, if you do not believe in God, then I can see how if you were under this belief that we are somehow God and that we're all connected and we are all God and we can tap into God, I could see how maybe you would think that it's our purpose here to sit there and just like be all Zen-like and like go into the mountains and smoke some weed and just be a monk for the rest of your life. And by the way, I don't think there's any problem with that inherently, but I don't think that's why we were put here. I believe that we were put here to bring glory and honor to God, to be responsible with what we've been given, to go do work. I believe that work is a good thing, right? And so I had a problem with a lot of I don't even say, having a problem is not the right word. It's like I disagreed with. I appreciated the perspective, and I'm glad that I now better understand what this belief believes, but I fundamentally disagree with how he tied that to how he tied the practical application in the book to that belief system. Now, I could totally be wrong on this, and I'm very open to that. But going back to how I said, I come at everything with this perspective and this understanding of like, okay, what does the Bible say? For me, Bible says I am a sinner, that Christ came to save me. If I have free choice in this world. I absolutely believe in free choice. Anybody that believes in predestination, I do not believe in that whatsoever. I believe that we are a fallen kind that's in need of a savior. Jesus came down, died on the cross, saved me from my sins, and I have a choice to choose him or reject him. And I believe that hell is not some fiery burning pit, but rather just separation from God. I don't know what that looks like, right? So we can choose to either accept or reject. And if we accept God, and we accept that there's a creator, we accept that there is this intelligent being, and I don't think it's like God is up there in the clouds with a white beard, right? But like we accept this all-knowing source that is intelligent, that created us, that he has a master plan for our life, and that he put us here for a very specific reason in the short 80 or 90 years we are here on earth, and then we move on to the afterlife or move on to whatever's next, right? And so I think the fundamental worldview of, call it, what does he say, spiritual enlightenment, that's where I'm going to differ in a lot of this book. Okay? Does that make sense? You guys with me on that? Comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts on this, by the way. For those of you who are listening on audio, feel free to shoot me a message on DM on Instagram at Josh40. That's JOSHF as in Frank, ORTI. Josh40, first name, last name. I'm very responsive on my Instagram feed in both the comments and in the DM. So shoot me a message on there. And if you're listening on Facebook, YouTube, whatever, leave something down in the comments. I read all your guys' comments. I'd love to know. Okay? So that's what I didn't like about the book. I didn't like, and once again, like saying like I didn't like it means I don't think it was bad. I think it was an interesting perspective. It's where I disagreed with the book. What I loved about the book and where I think it has massive power and massive influence and massive gems that people can learn from and really transform your life is the practical application and explanation of how our bodies and how our minds and how we as being entities work and function. And I do believe that we can escape a lot of pain and a lot of unhappiness and achieve a lot of peace and understand our bodies better by reading this book. And I do believe that there are a lot of biblical principles in this book. In fact, it's interesting. He references the Bible a lot. He references the Buddha. Pretty much the two main ones that he references were the Bible and the Buddha, right? And while a lot of what he did teach, and this is actually, let me go back to one of the things I don't like about this, or not didn't like, but the things I noticed, is that some of the times that he quoted the Bible, he took them out of context. And that's not really what the Bible is saying. I've studied the Bible a fair amount. My mom has studied the Bible more than almost anybody I know. Any living person I know, probably, certainly anybody that I'm close to. I mean, that's all she does. And I have had tremendous philosophical conversations with my mom. and like heated debates and out of love, of course, but like for hours and hours and hours and hours worth of, of time, questioning the Bible and really pushing back in a lot of ways. So I have a pretty good understanding of that. And I listen to, I'm a huge fan of Ravi Zacharias, who passed away recently, back in 2020, he passed away, but he's one of the greatest Christian apologists and scholars to really understand the Bible and like what it's saying, right? So I have a pretty good understanding of that. And I believe that Eckart in this book misquotes the Bible for what it was meaning sometimes. And the reference is that one of them, he was saying like, the lion will lay down with the lamb. And it was like, how he used it was not what the Bible was saying. That's not, and so while I do believe that there is a lot of fundamental principles in here and that he quotes the Bible a lot of times, I don't think he always accurately represents that. But let's get back to what I like about this. By reading this book, what it did is it made me re-examine the world around me by first re-examining how I respond to situations. So like one of the things that he talks about in here is how like our brains have habits. And once again, this is like if you read the book, The Power of Habit, I think I have it on my bookshelf. I'm not going to go over and get it. Where is it? Right there. Yeah. So like The Power of Habit, if you read Psycho-Cybernetics, if you start to study how the mind works and the subconscious mind works, and you start to understand like how stories from our past both are projected into our future and control our present if we let them, right? And so one of the things that he explains in the book is how our mind has these habits, has these patterns that we fall into, and how we subconsciously will literally pull ourselves out of the present moment almost all the time. And when I started to realize that I do have power in the present moment, and I have power the only time, I do not have any power in the future, and I have no power in the past, because they don't exist. And they don't exist in the sense of, like I said back at the beginning, it's not that the past didn't happen, it just means that when the past did happen, it happened in the present moment. So any change that happened in the past happened in the present moment, and any change that will happen in the future will only happen in the present moment. And when he explained it that way, I'm like, oh, okay. So if I have all of my power right here, and my mind is constantly being triggered to pull me out of the present moment because of its habits, because that's what our mind wants to do, because the stories that we tell ourselves, our mind loves to know what's going on. It likes normal. It likes what it is, what's the word that he used? It likes what it is comfortable with, and it likes routine. And so that's like why, somebody in an abusive relationship continues to go back to an abusive relationship. With their first relationship was abusive, and their second relationship was abusive, and their third relationship was abusive. And you're like, why don't you just leave? But it's because their brain is literally telling them that that's normal, and that there's comfort in that feeling of the unknown is scary, the known is not. And so our brain tells ourselves these stories from the past and says, this is normal. And so when you are in the present moment and something happens, your brain immediately wants to either pull you into the past or put you into the future. And it takes away all your power. And when you remove yourself from the power because you're out of the present moment now, it pulls you one way or the other. Now that creates stress and it creates anxiety because you have no power and you can't make any changes there, but rather you stress about it while the present moment is happening and you're not utilizing the present moment to make a change. Now, you guys, you've heard me talk a lot about the fact that I believe that entrepreneurs are the people that go into the future, create a new reality and will it into existence, right? Alex Sharfin talks about this. There's a difference. I'm not saying that it's bad to imagine a future reality. I'm not saying it's bad to take dedicated time to go into the future and see what that's going to look like and then come back and build it. But even that can be done in the present moment, because your present moment, you're consciously making a choice that right now I'm going to go into a future reality and imagine things. But that is a conscious decision in the present moment to do that. What our brain does is subconsciously, and we know, if you've listened to my podcast at all, you know that our brain, our subconscious mind, controls 90% of everything that we do. So we're doing it without realizing it. Our subconscious mind puts us into the future to live there and we don't even realize it's happening, or puts us into the past to live there and it's not even happening. And so one of the things that I love about what this book does is it explains in a very practical way how to recognize that, how to be present in the moment, and how to recognize things when they're happening. And one of the things I told Katie was, I feel like right now I'm in the middle of 2 operating systems. Now, I've been working on presence and being and stillness and things like that for, 6, 8, 9 months now because I've been working with Katie and she's all about this. But I feel like I'm starting to recognize now how to take every thought captive and to really understand what's going on in the moment rather than 20 minutes going by or an hour going by or a day or a week or a year going by and being like, oh my gosh, the whole last 6 months of my life I spent living in the future, stressing out about things or dwelling on the past, living on regrets when I could have been in the present moment. And so I'm learning how to capture it. And so because of that, it's like I'm in the process of pulling off an old operating system or pulling out an old operating system and putting a new operating system in. And this book helps explain that process and helps you give practical, tactical application of how your mind works from a third-party perspective. Because if you could think of yourself as have you ever seen the movie Inside Out? And you know how in Inside is a little Disney movie, right? And there's joy and sadness and anger and disgust. Is that the 4? Joy, sadness, anger, disgust. I think there's one more I thought. I don't know. But there's the little people inside of, I forget the girl's, Riley's head, right? And they're controlling it. Imagine there's you, and then you are in control of your mind. And so it helps to break that out, and it helps to show not so much, it does talk a lot about how the mind works, but rather the relationship between you and your mind and how our mind really, really controls a lot of what we do without even realizing it. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So I would highly recommend going to read the book. One of the other things, and I'm just kind of going through them here, that that I'm wrestling with, I don't know if I'd like it or don't like it yet, is I kind of feel, and this might just be my own personal opinion and bias about this. I was talking with Leah, my fiance, about this, and she's like, Josh, I think maybe this is something that's just in your head because you're wrestling with it. So maybe you don't feel this when you read the book, but sometimes I feel like he makes our mind the enemy because he talks about the ego brain and how our mind is the thing that forms right and wrong and how there's not really right and wrong. And so he basically is the mind is the thing that creates pain. And I understand what he's saying, but I kind of feel like he makes it out to be the enemy a little bit sometimes. I do not believe that our mind is the enemy. I think our mind can be our enemy. And I think that we have to be careful with our mind and we have to really be aware of how our mind works. But I believe our mind is a literal superpower tool that we've been given. And if we can master that, then we can go do phenomenal and crazy, amazing things. So I would say that's probably my review of the book. I would love to go further in and deeper. I mean, I could talk for hours about going into this, but I wanted to do a rather, I say shorter, we've been on here for 40 minutes, but a shorter breakdown of this so that people could, go through, because I think, let's see, I listen to everything at 2x speed, and let's see how long it is on Audible. But most people can't, my brain works really, really fast like that. The Power of Now. Let's see how long it is. Yeah, so at 1x speed, it is a 7.5 hour long book. And so I wanted to kind of film this or do this podcast episode, record this so that, you could listen to kind of a recap summary of it and have a perspective going in and make a decision whether or not you want to check it out. But we'll link it down below. You can go check it out. Power Now, I think it's $16-17. Definitely worth the read when you're ready for it. Not everybody's ready for it. You definitely have to you have to enter this book open-minded. You have to. If you enter this book closed-minded, it's going to be the worst read of your life, and you're going to think it's just a bunch of woo-woo fluffy BS that makes absolutely no sense. So I would highly recommend going in it with an open mind, knowing that you don't have to agree with everything in the book to really get value and understanding out about how powerful it is. And I think it could really, really change your life and at least your perspective. So certainly goes into one of my top 10 mindset books. I'm sure I'll be reading it again, going on to some of his other books in here as well. But I think, and I'm going to end with this. I think one of the biggest takeaways outside of the whole "you are not your mind," that was mind blowing to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, my whole identity is shattered again. Not quite whole identity, but my whole perspective on life is shattered. Oh my gosh, I'm separate from my mind. That was the biggest takeaway, of course. But outside of that, understanding the power of now, understanding the power of presence, understanding the power that's within inside us. I told my coach, Katie, I said, I think one of my biggest takeaways from this was that you don't, there's a lot of context when I told this to Katie, so I'm trying to see what I have to say here. I think a lot of times, like, I like to be smart. I love being smart. I consider myself a smart person. I like being smart. I like being seen as smart. And I think a lot of us are that way. And when you're smart, you learn things for the sake of learning. And just because you can, there's no real reason. And I love learning. And so I just learn for the sake of learning. And part of, I think, the thing that drives me is because I'm like, I always want to be prepared. What if I could have spent more time learning, I could be, make more money or be more successful, or I could manage better, I could lead better, I could do whatever. And I always attributed growth or success to learning. And if I could learn more, if I could study more, if I could just be smarter, that's going to get me the answers that I need. And I think one of the things that this book made me realize was that you do not have to be smart to get where you want to go in life. You don't have to be smart you don't have to have all the answers, because whenever you are facing a problem, whenever you are facing a tribulation, whenever something comes up that you don't have the answer to, by being present, by stepping into the power of now, and by really accessing that inner being inside of you, it will lead you to the answers. And I believe that that's because we are filled with the Holy Spirit. I don't believe that that's because we are God. Or maybe not even the Holy Spirit. I believe that that's how we are created, that God gives us that, infinite ability. But I feel so much more confident now going into anything. Like, I was already pretty confident before. But now, like, if I were to go into something that I have no understanding of or no knowledge of, or some tribulation that just seems overwhelming, I know that if I focus on being present, that the answers will come to me. And what I don't mean, I know this sounds woo-woo and fluffy, I don't mean that I'm just going to sit there and be like, now I know everything, yeah. No, what I mean is that when I sit back and I be present and I be still, that I will be guided to where I need to be guided to, and that I will have realizations and clarity around what I need to do to find the answers. So that, if there's a marketing issue that comes up, or a sales issue that comes up, or a leadership issue that comes up, I'm probably not going to be like, yes, I now know the formula of how to create perfect webinars, yes. Or no, it's okay, breathe. Okay, now I understand where it is that I need to go in order to find that answer. I have clarity around where my problem really is. And I can go and find the correct answers to do that in a much more accelerated time than I could before. I don't need to be smart in order to be successful. I need to be present in order to be successful. I need to be stepping into the power of now. So anyway, that is my review of the book. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on it, if this was helpful or not. Comment down below. Just comment helpful if it was, comment not helpful. I would love your feedback. Scale from 1 to 10. How helpful was it? So feel free to drop that below as well. If you are not listening on YouTube or Facebook, make sure to leave a comment or shoot me a DM on Instagram, or leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever it is that you are listening. And would love to hear back from you. Appreciate you guys. If you have not yet subscribed on iTunes or Spotify, we're making a big push. Would really appreciate it for a rating, a review on there. It helps boost the podcast, get more listeners. We are continuing to grow, and it's super, super exciting. So I just appreciate each and every one of you. Guys, thank you so much for listening. If you want more book reviews, comment down below. Let me know, what book do you want me to review, either that I've read or that I have not read. Maybe I can put it on my reading list. I'm really, really getting into reading this year. I wanted to set a goal for myself that said I was going to read 1 book a week. Not going to happen. I am on track for that, though. I'm almost done with my second book for the year, and we're at the time of recording this, we're wrapping up the second week of the year. But I think a reasonable goal will be 26 books or 25 books, but one every 2 weeks. 2 a month would be 24 books, but we go by the week. So 25 books, I took the average of that. If I can read 25 books for the year, that's kind of my goal. So this is the first one, on the second one now, and I'll be updating you guys in the process of that. Guys, thank you so much for listening. As always, hustle, hustle, God bless. Do not be afraid to think different, because those of us that think different are going to be the ones that change the world. I love you all, and I will see you on the next episode. Don't forget, we got some cool stuff coming. February is going to be a different month. I can't explain why, and it's going to be weird at first, but you guys are just going to have to deal with it. And then March, everything will make a whole lot more sense. Guys, I love you all, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take it easy, fam. Peace.